You thought it ended there, didn't you? 4 stories, 4 warnings. But Halloween doesn't stop when the porch lights go out. The night keeps breathing deep and quiet long after the laughter fades and the candy bowls sit empty. That's when the real stories begin. The ones whispered between neighbors, passed down in police reports, buried under headlines that never made the front page. Because sometimes, the scariest things that happen on Halloween aren't the ones people talk about. They're the ones no one wants to believe. There's something about this night that draws danger out like a magnet. Maybe it's the masks. Maybe it's the darkness. Or maybe it's that simple human arrogance, the belief that if you light a pumpkin, hang some fake cobwebs, and call it tradition, you can somehow control the fear that hides behind it. But fear doesn't care about tradition. Fear doesn't need permission. It only needs a moment. And on Halloween night, moments are everywhere. Somewhere, a pair of kids were out trick-or-treating, their laughter echoing down the street when a black Jeep pulled up beside them. It looked normal at first, headlights cutting through the dark, music low, engine humming steady. But the men inside weren't there for candy or costumes. They were hunting. In another quiet neighborhood, a little girl told her father there was someone in her closet. He didn't believe her. Not at first. He thought it was just Halloween nerves, a child's imagination playing tricks. But the truth was far worse than any monster she could have dreamed up. Hundreds of miles away, a family moved into their new home on Halloween night. A fresh start, a new chapter, boxes still unpacked. But as the clock struck midnight, something in that house started moving. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. And before dawn, one of them would swear they saw a shadow standing by the bed whispering a single word, "Boo." And then, there were the friends who paid money to be scared walking through a haunted house attraction where everything was supposed to be fake. But what followed them home that night wasn't part of the show. These are the stories that live in the quiet space between imagination and reality. The ones that remind us Halloween doesn't need ghosts or demons to be terrifying. Sometimes all it takes is a stranger who knows your street, a shadow that moves when it shouldn't, a mask that looks a little too real. Last time, we learned that evil doesn't always wear claws or teeth. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it wears a fedora. Sometimes it just stands outside your door, waiting for you to open it. Tonight, the masks come off. And what's underneath isn't supernatural, it's worse. It's human. So, as we step into the next 4 true Halloween stories, keep one thing in mind. These aren't legends told around campfires. These aren't scripts written for a movie. These are real moments pulled from the nights that were supposed to be fun. Real people who found out too late that the scariest thing about Halloween isn't what you see in the dark. It's what's looking back at you. Because the thing about Halloween, the reason it never truly ends, is that it teaches us something uncomfortable. We don't fear monsters because they're imaginary. We fear them because, deep down, we recognize them. We've seen them before. In someone's eyes, in someone's smile, maybe even in the mirror. So, lock your doors, turn the volume down, and if you hear a knock outside while you listen, don't answer it. Not tonight. Not until the sun comes up. Because sometimes, Halloween knocks back. We were 11 years old that Halloween. Too young to see the world for what it really was. Old enough to think we were invincible. My best friend Casey and I had been out for almost 2 hours. Our pillowcases half full of candy. Our sneakers covered in leaves and dust from running house to house. The night air was crisp, cold enough to make our noses sting. The neighborhood was winding down, fewer porch lights on now, fewer kids laughing in the distance. We figured we'd hit one last street before heading home. That was our mistake. The road we turned onto was darker than the others. Only a few pumpkins glowed on the porches. The streetlights flickered like they were struggling to stay alive. That's when we saw a black Jeep idling near the corner, its headlights off, just sitting there. At first, we didn't think much of it. Cars parked all the time. But as we started crossing the small wooden bridge that led over the creek, the Jeep's engine growled to life. Its lights blinked on, bright and blinding, aimed straight at us. It rolled forward slowly, the tires crunching over gravel. I remember the way the reflection of the headlights stretched across the water like twin spears of light, trembling with the ripples. Casey grabbed my arm. "Let's go," she whispered. We quickened our pace. The Jeep stopped at the end of the bridge, blocking the exit. The window rolled down with a mechanical whine. A man's voice called out raspy. Smoker's voice, older, maybe in his 50s. "Hey kids, you know where Brook Street is?" His tone was off. Too friendly, too practiced. I yelled back, "No, sorry," and turned us around. We started walking back the way we came, trying not to look like we were running. The Jeep didn't move. The sound of the idling engine hummed behind us. Then, without warning, it pulled away, but instead of leaving, it turned down the next block. We thought we'd lost it. We were wrong. By the time we reached the other side of the neighborhood, headlights flared again, this time from the opposite direction. Another car, not the Jeep. An SUV, dark gray. It came around the corner fast, braking hard as it stopped in front of us. The driver rolled down his window, and I'll never forget his face long, narrow, eyes sunk deep, with a twitch in his cheek every few seconds. In the back seat, another man leaned forward, smiling like he thought this was funny. He had gray, curly hair and a thick mustache that glistened in the dashboard light. "Get in," he said. "We've got candy, big bags, the good kind." I felt Casey's hand tremble in mine. We didn't answer. We just backed up. The man in the back seat opened his door slightly. "Come on, we won't hurt you." His voice was low, husky, and wrong. Every word made my stomach twist. Then we heard the sound of tires screeching behind us. The black Jeep had caught up. It swerved onto the sidewalk, headlights flashing, blocking our only escape route. The two cars idled there, trapping us in the middle of the street. For a second, none of us moved. Then, as if on cue, both passenger doors of the Jeep opened, and two men stepped out. They were old, maybe in their 60s. Heavy coats, cigarettes glowing in the dark. One of them said, "Let's grab 'em." We dropped our candy and ran. Our lungs burned, hearts pounding. The sound of boots slapping pavement behind us. I could hear the men yelling, the words garbled by the pounding in my ears. The road curved uphill toward my house, our only hope. We didn't stop running. I could see the porch light glowing faintly through the trees, a tiny beacon that felt miles away. The Jeep revved behind us. Headlights swayed over our shoulders. I don't know how close they got close enough for the light to hit our backs. Close enough for me to feel their presence, like static on my skin. We reached my yard, stumbled up the steps, and started hammering the doorbell. Mom, open the door!" The men stopped at the edge of the yard, watching us. They didn't say a word now, just stood there. One of them took a drag of his cigarette. The ember glowed red, like a tiny, evil smile. The door flew open. My mom's face appeared, wide-eyed, confused. We burst inside, yelling over each other, pointing at the driveway. By the time she looked out, the Jeep was already backing away, the SUV following right behind it. Both turned the corner and disappeared. Mom called the police immediately. Her voice shook, but she didn't let it show in front of us. She described the vehicles, black Jeep, gray SUV, and the men inside. Raspy voices, older, smelled like smoke. The dispatcher told her officers were already responding to another call in a nearby neighborhood about two cars matching that description, trying to lure kids. We waited in the living room, all the lights on, the blinds closed. My dad came home 10 minutes later, furious and scared in equal measure. He stood by the window, staring at the empty street. Then, for the first time that night, I saw something break in his face, the kind of fear adults usually hide from kids. An hour later, flashing blue and red lights painted the front of our house. A police car sat outside, and two officers walked up the steps. They told us they'd found both vehicles pulled over near the edge of town. 3 men inside. 3 old creeps who matched every description we gave. They were in handcuffs. I remember running to the door, pushing past my dad to look. The officers were talking to my mom outside when another patrol car drove by, with the Jeep behind it, its windows dark. I caught a glimpse of one man's face as they passed, pale, expressionless, eyes staring straight ahead like he didn't even see us. I felt a mix of rage and relief so intense that I shouted after them. Casey joined me, yelling, "We're not scared of you anymore." We both gave them the finger. My mom pulled us back inside before we could say another word. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment when the Jeep's headlights turned on behind us, that slow, deliberate movement like a predator stretching before the chase. I realized then how close we came to never making it home. Every Halloween after that, my mom didn't let us go out alone. I didn't blame her, because once you see the face of someone who is ready to take you, ready to erase you from the world without hesitation, you understand that monsters don't live in stories. They drive cars, they smoke cigarettes, they smile when they lie, and they don't disappear just because the lights come back on. Halloween night had always been my daughter Jamie's favorite. She was 7 that year, old enough to choose her own costume, young enough to still believe that the world was safe. She dressed as a little witch, purple dress and pointed hat, her tiny sneakers peeking out from under the fabric. We spent hours walking door to door, her small hand gripping mine as she tried to say trick or treat louder than the other kids. By the time we got home, her bag was overflowing with candy. I remember her smiling up at me, cheeks red from the cold, saying, "Best Halloween ever, Daddy." I cooked dinner, and we ate while watching one of those old family-friendly Halloween movies, the kind that makes kids think the worst thing out there is a ghost hiding in the attic. Around 9 o'clock, I tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and went to my own room. I was exhausted, kind of tired that seeps into your bones. I brushed my teeth, turned off the light, and lay down, half asleep before my head even hit the pillow. Sometime later, I don't know how long, I felt a small hand on my arm. "Daddy," Jamie whispered, her voice trembling. "There's someone in my closet." I sat up, blinking the sleep out of my eyes. "Sweetheart," I murmured, "it's just Halloween. You're probably hearing the wind or the house settling." But she shook her head, her eyes wide. "I heard them moving," she said. "They knocked something over." A chill crawled down my spine, but I forced a smile. "Okay," I said. "How about this? I'll come with you, and we'll check together, all right?" She nodded, clutching my hand as we walked down the hall. Her nightlight glowed faintly, casting just enough illumination for me to see the little witch hat still sitting on her dresser. Everything looked normal. "See?" I said softly. "Nothing to worry about." Then, something shifted. It was faint, a soft thud, like something falling inside the closet. I froze. Jamie's eyes went wide again. I could feel her small fingers tightening around mine. Every instinct in me screamed that I should take her and run. But instead, I whispered, "Go to the neighbors. Right now. Tell them to call the police." She didn't argue. She bolted out of the room, her bare feet padding across the hardwood floor. As soon as she was gone, I turned back to the closet. The door was slightly ajar. The air inside smelled faintly of dust and plastic from her toy bins. I stepped closer. "All right," I said, trying to sound calm. "Whoever's in there, you picked the wrong house." No answer. I grabbed the baseball bat from behind the dresser. I'd put it there years ago, just in case, and yanked the closet door open. What I saw made my stomach turn. It was Randy, the teenage boy who lived next door. He was sitting on top of Janie's toy chest, frozen like a deer in headlights. His eyes were wide, his hands shaking. "What the hell are you doing in my daughter's room?" I yelled, grabbing him by the collar and pulling him out. He stammered. I just wanted to play a joke." I didn't let him finish. I dragged him down the hall, through the front door, straight to his parents' house. My daughter was already there, crying, clutching our neighbor's arm. When Randy's father opened the door, I shoved the boy inside. "Your son broke into my house," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "He was hiding in my little girl's closet." Randy's dad, Mark, looked horrified. "Is this true?" he demanded. Randy nodded, tears forming in his eyes. Mark slapped him hard across the face. "Why? Why would you do something like that?" I was still shaking. "I'm not calling the cops," I said. "But if he ever steps near my property again, I swear to God it won't end with a slap." Mark nodded quickly, apologizing over and over. "It won't happen again," he said. "I'll handle it." But before I could turn to leave, I asked Randy, "Were you alone?" His silence said everything. My chest tightened. "Who else was with you?" He hesitated. "Daryl," he whispered. "He told me it would be funny." I looked at Mark. "Where is he?" Mark looked confused. "Daryl?" he repeated. "He's not my kid." I ran out the door before anyone could stop me. My house was dark, the front door still hanging open. I stormed down the hall toward Janie's room, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. The closet door was wide open now, and crouched in front of it was another boy, older, scruffy, with greasy hair and a smirk that froze the blood in my veins. In his hand was a small pair of pink underwear. My daughter's. Rage consumed me. I grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. "What the hell are you doing here?" I shouted. He tried to speak, but the words came out as a wheeze. I hit him once, twice, open-handed slaps that echoed through the room, and then I threw him toward the door. "Get out!" I roared. He stumbled out of the house, clutching his face, running into the night. I stood there, trembling, my breath ragged. Jamie came in moments later, crying, her face buried against my chest. I didn't realize I was crying too, till I felt the tears hit her hair. We slept in my room that night, both of us too scared to be alone. I locked every window, every door. But the next morning, when the sunlight crept through the curtains, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a small hole drilled through her closet door. Perfectly round, perfectly aimed toward her bed. The realization hit me so hard I had to sit down. Those boys hadn't just been hiding, they'd been watching her. For how long? I'll never know. I thought about calling the police again, but I didn't. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of shame, maybe because Mark was my friend, and I didn't want to destroy his family. But in the weeks that followed, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me jump. Every creak of the floorboards felt like footsteps. Janie's 13 now. We've moved to a different neighborhood. She doesn't talk about that night, and I don't make her. But sometimes, when I pass her room and see her closet door slightly open, I feel that same chill crawl up my spine. Because once you've seen real evil, the kind that looks you in the eye while holding something that innocent, you stop worrying about monsters in the dark. You start worrying about the ones next door. We had just moved into our new house that Halloween night. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a bigger place, a quieter neighborhood, the kind of home where nothing bad ever happens. My parents called it our dream house. To me, it just felt too big, too empty. There were 7 of us, total: my mom, dad, 4 sisters, my brother, and me. Boxes were stacked in every hallway. The place still smelled like paint and cardboard. It didn't feel like home yet. We lived in Mississauga, in a neighborhood called Winston Churchill. The houses were close together, the streets lined with trees that looked skeletal under the streetlights. It was already late, almost 11:30, when my mother called us upstairs to help unpack. I remember groaning, saying I was tired, but she insisted. So, we spent the next half hour moving boxes from one room to another, organizing, cleaning, trying to make the place livable. By midnight, the house was finally quiet. My parents and siblings were in the basement sorting out more boxes, but I was done. I went upstairs, shut my door, and flopped onto my bed. The sheets were cold, and the air in the room felt heavy, like the temperature had dropped a few degrees in just that space. I pulled on a sweater, told myself it was just the late-night chill, and closed my eyes. I don't know how long I slept before I woke up. Maybe an hour. The sound that woke me was faint. A soft, rhythmic creaking, like someone walking in the hallway just outside my door. I lay still, listening. The floorboards upstairs were old, so every step made a small groan. It sounded like someone pacing. At first, I figured it was my brother or one of my sisters. We'd been teasing each other all day, jumping out of boxes and scaring each other. Maybe they were trying to get one last laugh before bed. "Knock it off," I called out. No answer. The footsteps stopped. I waited a few seconds, then heard them again slower this time, like whoever it was had waited for me to speak. I sat up, staring at the door. The sound stopped again. "Seriously," I said, louder. "Go to bed." Nothing. That's when I realized the light under the door wasn't coming from the hallway. It was flickering like candlelight. I could see shadows moving in it, stretching and shrinking as if someone was walking back and forth. My chest tightened. Slowly, I got up and opened the door. The hallway was empty. No candles, no shadows, just darkness. I called downstairs. "Hey, is someone up here?" My mom shouted back that everyone was in the basement. That's when the air turned cold enough for me to see my breath. The hallway light flickered once, then died completely. Something banged from my parents' room down the hall. A sharp, hollow thud like someone had slammed a drawer shut. I froze. "Hello?" I said. No answer. I wanted to believe it was one of my siblings, but fear has a way of peeling logic apart. I crept toward my parents' door. The wood under my feet creaked with each step, and the closer I got, the louder the sound from inside became not banging anymore, but a rhythmic tapping like fingers drumming against the wall. I reached the door and knocked once. "Mom?" I whispered. The tapping stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Then came a voice, faint, barely audible, like someone whispering through cloth. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded close, just beyond the door. "Mom?" I said again. The door creaked open by itself. The room was dark except for the pale glow of the moon through the curtains. I stepped inside, every muscle in my body tense. The air felt thick, like breathing underwater. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "Is someone in here?" I whispered. No reply. Then, from behind me, the bedroom door slammed shut. I spun around, gripping the handle, but it wouldn't move. My throat tightened. "Stop it!" I yelled, pounding on the wood. The handle jerked suddenly, and I stumbled backward. The door swung open, and there stood my mom, her face pale, eyes wide. "What are you doing up here?" she said, her voice sharp. "There was someone in your room," I said, my voice cracking. I heard banging. "The door shut by itself." Her brow furrowed. "We've been in the basement the whole time," she said. My dad appeared behind her, flashlight in hand. He scanned the room, the hallway, then looked back at me. "There's no one here," he said. I wanted to believe him. I really did, but I knew what I'd heard. They walked me back to my room, told me to try to sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening for the smallest sound. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted off. The next time I woke, it was to the sound of my door creaking open again. I thought it was my mom checking on me, but when I turned, I froze. A figure stood in the doorway, tall, impossibly tall, its head nearly brushing the ceiling. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It just stood there, a silhouette darker than the dark around it. My body locked up. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Then, in a deep, almost playful voice, it said one word, "Boo." That broke whatever paralysis had gripped me. I screamed, loud enough to shake the walls. My parents rushed in seconds later, flipping on the light. The figure was gone. My siblings crowded the doorway, faces pale. I was sobbing, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. They searched every inch of the house, under beds, in closets, behind boxes, nothing. My parents tried to convince me it was a dream, that the stress of moving and lack of sleep had gotten to me, but they hadn't seen what I saw. You can't mistake a dream for something that real, something that heavy, that deliberate. For weeks after, I refused to sleep alone. My family teased me at first, but eventually even they stopped laughing, because every night around the same time, footsteps echoed in that hallway again. Sometimes they were faint, sometimes loud enough to shake the picture frames. My parents blamed the house settling, the pipes, the wind, but there was no wind in that sealed, airless hallway. We still lived there. My parents call it coincidence. My sisters say I scared myself into hearing things. But my brother, the one who moved into my old room, he doesn't laugh anymore. He says that sometimes, when he's lying in bed late at night, the door creaks open on its own, and he hears a voice whisper, low and close to his ear, the same word that's been burned into my memory ever since that Halloween night. We were 20 years old that Halloween, the perfect age for doing stupid things we thought were harmless. Haunted houses were our tradition, something we did every year, trying to outscare each other, chasing that adrenaline high. There were 6 of us that night, and we'd heard about this new place on the edge of town called Scare House. Journey to the Basement. The name alone sounded cheap, but everyone online said it was one of the scariest haunted house attractions ever built. So, of course, we had to go. When we arrived, the parking lot was packed, fog machines hissing by the entrance. The building itself looked like an old Victorian home that someone had ripped straight out of a horror movie, peeling paint, cracked windows, and a crooked sign that said, "Enter if you dare." Inside, it smelled like latex and fake blood. Actors in costume roamed the lobby, zombies, clowns, masked killers jumping at people and laughing. It was all fun, all pretend. We paid for our tickets and were handed a simple rule sheet. No cell phones, no touching the actors, and if you wanted to leave, say, "I want out." A staff member would guide you to the exit. We laughed. None of us planned to quit early. The first room looked like an old living room, decorated with dusty furniture and cobwebs. In the center, a coffin sat open. A fake corpse inside twitched when we walked by, and half of us screamed, half of us laughed. It was everything you expected from a haunted house. Creaky floors, flashing lights, actors popping out at random. We thought we were prepared, but the deeper we went, the stranger it felt. The air grew heavier. The sound of muffled whispers playing through hidden speakers started to feel too real. Every hallway looked identical, like a maze that kept resetting itself. The walls were lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow you. The deeper we went, the darker it got until we found the basement door. The sign above it read, "Find the key. Escape the dark." We hesitated. One of the guys, Eddie, said, "It's probably part of the game." So we went down. The wooden stairs groaned with each step. The air down there was cold, thick with the smell of mildew and dirt. We could barely see anything. Our hands brushed against damp walls. We expected a jump scare, an actor, a scream, but instead, we found silence. It was too dark to see, too quiet to be fake. "Hello?" Someone called out. The word echoed back, distorted, as if whispered by someone standing just behind us. I felt a hand brush my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one. I told myself it was one of my friends, but in the darkness, I couldn't tell where anyone was anymore. Then, from somewhere near the back of the room, a faint metallic clinking like keys jingling. We followed the sound. Our footsteps echoed across the concrete floor, until Eddie's flashlight beam caught something glinting on a table, a single key. He grabbed it, and that's when we heard movement behind us. Slow footsteps. Not the heavy stomping of an actor running in for a jump scare. This was different. Deliberate. Careful. "Hey, we found the key," Eddie said, trying to sound brave. No answer. The footsteps stopped. We ran. Up the stairs, back through the twisting hallways. Our laughter shaky now, the nervous kind that hides panic. The exit door came into view, marked by a glowing red exit sign. Outside, cool air hit our faces, and we burst out into the night, laughing hysterically from relief. Just outside the exit was a small bin with a sign that said, "Drop keys here." Eddie tossed the key in, and we started heading toward the parking lot, still joking about how freaked out we were. None of us noticed the figure standing by the edge of the attraction. Not right away. It wasn't until we reached the sidewalk that I saw him tall, wearing a black robe and a bloody pig mask that covered his entire head. The rubber looked slick under the dim lights. At first I thought he was another actor, part of the show, maybe there to wave goodbye and spook people one last time. But then he started walking toward us. We laughed, thinking it was funny. "We're done, man," Eddie said, waving him off. The man didn't respond. He just kept walking, slow, steady, silent. We picked up the pace. So did he. When we turned the corner, he turned too, Every time we looked back, he was there, keeping the same distance, still silent, still watching. We stopped once, thinking he'd walk past, but he didn't. He stopped too. "Okay, that's creepy," one of my friends muttered. "Is this guy part of the staff?" "I don't think so," I said quietly. They said no one wears masks outside the house. We kept walking, faster now. The air had gone cold again. The street empty, except for the sound of his footsteps behind us. 5 blocks. That's how long he followed us. We tried to brush it off, telling ourselves it had to be part of the show, some marketing stunt maybe. But the way he moved, it didn't feel like acting. When Eddie's house finally came into view, we all felt a wave of relief. His parents were home, lights on, TV flickering through the window. "We're fine," Eddie said. "He'll stop once we go inside." We jogged up the driveway, laughing nervously, trying to make it feel normal. The laughter died when we heard the gate to the backyard creak open. He was coming around the side of the house. "Dad!" Eddie yelled, fumbling for the back door. "Dad, get your gun!" That must have done it. The man stopped halfway across the yard, tilting his head slowly toward the house. The porch light illuminated him just enough for me to see the edges of the pig, masked the crusted fake blood, the cracked rubber, and underneath it, 2 eyes staring straight at us. Then, Eddie's dad stepped outside with a pistol in his hand, his face red with fury. "Get the hell off my property," he shouted. The man didn't move. "I said go!" For a moment, everything was still. Then the man raised his hand slowly, voice muffled through the mask. "Don't shoot," he said. "I'm only 27. Eddie's dad didn't lower the gun. "Drop the mask, now." The man hesitated just long enough for us to feel that horrible, creeping uncertainty, and then turned and walked away. No sudden moves, no running, just walked into the darkness until the shadows swallowed him whole. We stood there for a long time, not saying anything. The air smelled like iron and wet leaves. Eddie's dad called the police, but when they searched the area, they found nothing. No footprints, no mask, no signs anyone had been there. The next day, Eddie called the haunted house to report the incident. The manager told him they didn't have any actors in pig masks and never had. For weeks, I couldn't shake the image of that mask the way the light caught its surface, how it almost looked like it was breathing. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wake up convinced I could hear footsteps outside, the faint squeak of rubber dragging across pavement. And every Halloween since, I've avoided haunted houses altogether, because that night taught me something I'll never forget. When you pay to be scared, you think you know what you're afraid of. You think it's all fake, until the nightmare follows you home. We like to think of Halloween as harmless, a single night, when it's okay to be afraid, because we know it's all pretend. We hang fake cobwebs, carve pumpkins, wear masks, and tell stories about monsters that don't exist. It's safe, it's controlled. It's a way of flirting with danger without ever getting too close. But these stories, they don't end when the porch lights go out. Because what if the fear we play with isn't pretending? What if, for some people, it's real? Think about the kids in the dark street, running from the black Jeep that wasn't there for candy. Think about the father who found a boy hiding in his daughter's closet, holding something he was never meant to touch. Think about the family who moved into their dream home, only to discover that something else was already living there, and those friends laughing their way through a haunted house, only to realize the terror didn't stop when they stepped back outside. 4 stories, different towns, different people, different kinds of fear, but they all share one thing. Every single one started the same way, with someone thinking it couldn't happen to them. That's the real horror of Halloween. Not the masks or the monsters, but the moment you realize you've let fear inside your home and it refuses to leave. The truth is, the human brain doesn't know how to separate danger from curiosity. That's why we slow down to look at car crashes, why we open closet doors when we hear something move, why we laugh when we should run. It's the same reason we love haunted houses and horror movies, because we want to believe fear is something we can control. We want to believe we can take it off, like a costume. But fear has a way of sticking to you. It lingers, even when the night is over. The people who live these stories learned that the hard way. For them, Halloween stopped being a game the moment it crossed the line into something real. And once that happens, once you've seen the face of fear and realized it's human, you can't unsee it. You stop looking for ghosts. You start looking at the people around you. Because the truth is, monsters don't come from the dark. They come from us. From curiosity, loneliness, obsession, anger. The darkness just gives them a place to hide. And Halloween, it gives them an excuse to come out and blend in. So maybe next time you see a man standing too still under a streetlight, or a car that seems to follow you a little too long, or a knock at the door after midnight that feels out of place, don't tell yourself it's nothing. Don't assume it's just part of the holiday. Fear exists for a reason. It's there to keep you alive. Maybe that's why, even as adults, we still turn on the lights before walking into a dark room. Maybe that's why we double-check the locks before bed. We tell ourselves it's routine, but deep down, we know what we're doing. We're making sure the night stays outside because once it gets in, it doesn't leave easily. Halloween is supposed to end when the sun rises. The masks come off, the candy bowl's empty, and the world goes back to normal. But for some people, it never ends. For them, Halloween became a date on the calendar that marks the moment their lives changed forever. Nick, the man who thought the party would never stop. The kid who picked up the phone one too many times. The family who thought they'd moved into peace. The friends who thought the monsters were fake. They all learned the same truth, that the scariest part of Halloween isn't the things that jump out at you. It's the ones that don't need to. The ones that wait. The ones that watch. So as you blow out your candles and lock your doors tonight, just remember somewhere out there, someone's still walking under those dim orange streetlights. Someone who doesn't need a mask to blend in. Someone who waits for this night every year because it's the only time their darkness doesn't look out of place. Halloween isn't about pretending to be afraid. It's about remembering why we are. And maybe, just maybe, that's the part we should never forget.